Welcome back, everyone, for video number 2. We're just going to pick up right where we left off. So where I actually left off was these pseudo-ciliated columnar epithelial. I did want to mention, and they show this, and it says it right here, but those little hair-like appendages up here, those little cilia, we find these in the trachea. The cilia are there to capture dust particles that you might breathe in a contaminated environment. I wish at this point they were a little more effective at capturing those virus particles and that we could cough them out or whatever. But maybe not so much. But anyway, so again, we still see their goblet cells, but pseudostratified, they look like they might be in layers because some of the nuclei are up here, but a lot of the nuclei are down here, and we have these kind of different shapes all together. So it might appear that they're in layers based on that, but really they're not. It's one big long from top to bottom, one big long cell from top to bottom. Transitional epithelial, and again, if you just find a way, I think, to connect these definitions with kind of the images. So transitional, like these are transitioning from epithelial cells that are up here. They almost look like, to me, like balloons floating up, like here's one and it floats up to here. So they're transitioning to that surface from deeper down. It looks, so transitional epithelia, it mentions the urinary bladder. So think of how your bladder has to really stretch, like these have to stretch out, and this whole layer has to become thinner when your bladder becomes full and full of urine, and then when it's emptied, it shrinks back down to a much smaller size. So these have to be able to transition from, how they are here to a much more stretched apart kind of look. So transitional epithelia. This is a little please quiz yourself. Pause this and answer the question. Which of the following statements about types of epithelial cells is false? So take a little pause here. And the answer is A. Simple columnar epithelial cells line the tissue of the lungs. That is not true. If we go back and look at that one, it is the digestive tract. Simple columnar epithelial actually line the digestive tract. Right there. Nice circle, huh? So it would be digestive tract. So moving into connective tissue. So several different kinds of connective tissue. Obviously, it connects, it binds things together. That makes complete and total sense. That would be obvious, I think, and supports parts of the body. These contain specialized cells. Remember, all tissues are made up of specialized cells. Ground substance, and also some protein fibers. So it's not just cells. There's some other stuff in there too that's pretty important. This ground substance that we refer to is actually not cellular. And in fact, it's not just one thing. Some of it is solid and some of it is fluid. And then these ground substances and protein fibers all together make up that the matrix of actual tissue. So quick overview here, connective types of tissue, 3 main types. I always think it's a little surprising for students that blood is considered connective tissue, but we do lump it into that category, as well as the lymphatic fluid as well. So the 3 main types of connective tissue, and we're going to look at each of these individually. I know I talk really fast, but I do that because I'm timed for 15 minutes, and you can pause this and replay it as many times as you want to. Anyway, so fibrous, it can be loose or dense. Supportive can be cartilage or bone, and then the fluid ones we'll talk about blood and lymph. So loose fibrous tissue I'm going to peek ahead really quick. Okay, so loose fibrous tissue, this we find supporting that epithelium and also many organs. This just really has this kind of thread-like appearance, if you will. We have some collagen fiber. Collagen is so important in our bodies and plays so many incredible roles. And I don't know if any of you are into collagen supplements. It's important in the structure of our skin, but also in that structure of our connective tissue, and maintaining that. And certainly, there's not a lot of scientific evidence to support supplementing with actual collagen, but we do know that collagen is incredibly important in, and again, those just several different aspects in our body. It has lots of important jobs. And here they have label, here's a fibroblast. Elastin fiber are these very thin ones that look like hair. We know that these collagen fibers can break over time. And, you know, it's actually causes some of the benefit or some of the issues that we see with in people as they age. The next one, adipose tissue. These are our fat cells, okay? And these we don't really gain a lot of fat cells beyond the age of about 6, but fat cells can become very large as weight is gained. So this adipose or fat tissue is considered connective tissue, made up of these adipocytes, which are, you know, fat cells. They just look pretty empty and kind of not very exciting, not a lot of structures that we can see. The nuclei are pushed all the way to the cell's edge. And again, these can sort of expand and shrink over time as you gain and lose weight. So they're kind of unique that way. Dense fibrous connective tissue. We find them in things like fibroblasts, macrophages. They're mostly collagen. We find them in tendons and ligaments. So tendons, again, are for connecting muscle to bone and allow movement. Ligaments are for connecting bones to bones. Please know the difference between the two. I think it's one of the main things that students just really struggle, I should move this down a little bit, really struggle to remember the difference between the two. I always remember because the whole Greek mythology and Achilles tendon. And so the Achilles tendon, you probably know or have heard, if you sever your Achilles tendon, you're just, you're not able to walk, right? It connects that whole, you know, large muscle, your calf muscle basically, to your foot and allows movement of that foot. So if your tendon is severed, we can't use that muscle for walking. So that's one, I think, really good way to kind of remember that. And then cartilage. So cartilage is this, you know, very bendable, like we find it on the ends of bones and obviously our nose and ears and, you know, parts of our knees and so forth. So it's this solid but flexible. And then we have these cells called chondrocytes just sort of embedded in that matrix. So these aren't in a liquid. These are actually in that cartilage tissue. So we say the cells are in chambers called lacunae, and this, yeah, as we age, so babies have lots and lots of cartilage, which a lot of it eventually turns into bone, and they lose that flexibility of those body parts as they get older. So we further break down those cartilage types into 3 main categories. Hyaline, which is what we see in the fetal skeletons and also on the ends of those bones that where those joints go together. Elastic cartilage, obviously elastic. It's very stretchy. Your outer ear, you can move that a lot, and it's not uncomfortable. And then the fibrocartilage, strong, again, a strong collagen fiber. Again, we see that collagen. Discs between the vertebrae, this is where we find an awful lot of that. As we get older, that tends to kind of deteriorate. That's one of the reasons why as you get older, you lose a little bit of height. And just, yeah, as you get older and this starts to deteriorate and unfortunately end up with sometimes, back pain, that sort of thing, especially people who do really physical jobs their whole life. Common for those discs to kind of become damaged over time and kind of wear away. We're just going to do a super quick overview of bones and the structure. There's a lot of information on this slide. I don't necessarily care about all of this just because we've lost a couple weeks here. I know there's going to be things that we don't get through. We're just going to kind of super overview. So compact bone, let me just think about, okay, so compact bone, and they show you kind of that outer layer. Makes sense that needs to be harder. You should understand that bone is certainly a living tissue. That's why when you break it, it can repair. Look at all these veins and arteries that run through these bones. I think osteoblasts, it's probably important to understand that there's, I don't care about this structure. We are just going to move on from that. Osteoblasts, I think this is important, surround the exterior of the bone. So osteoblasts, I'm just thinking so these are the 3 types of cells that we find in bone tissue, and kind of what their jobs are and sort of where we find them. I think that's all I really care about. Just know that there's contact bone, and then there's spongy bone that just tends to be more porous, just like it sounds. And I think that's probably, think about, yeah, this is a lot of the same. So I think it's important. I think these are probably the main points. So cells in chambers called lacunae. The whole matrix is solid and rigid. The cool thing about bones in your skeletal system is the more you work out, the stronger they get. It's like if you do a lot of lifting with your arms, for example, your body senses that, and those cells sense that, and the communication is, hey, we're under a lot of physical stress. We're going to build little pillars in here that make this bone stronger. And so it builds these little pillars, makes this bone a little stronger, or a lot stronger, actually, if you're really active. And so the more, weight-bearing exercise you do, let's say that this is inside, such an artist, look at me. So these are the little pillars inside of here. This is why people who don't do a lot of physical activity are more at risk as they get older for things like osteoporosis, which is, that deterioration of the bones, and, your bones get thin and brittle and break easily. So working out or doing physical activity, whether it's a sport or whether it's for fun, any of that is always strengthening your bones and making them stronger. And it's really important to do that while you're young and your bones are still growing. But even also as you're younger, like you guys have probably heard, like, oh, if you break a bone when you're young, it repairs a lot faster. Those cells are still just more active when you're younger, even if you're done growing tall. So just building that strong structure from that physical activity. And I think this is where I'm going to stop. I think blood is next. We'll do that another day. So there we are.